Many people go through life like that. They're waiting for someone else's stamp of approval to be able to go chase their dreams. And that's not how it works. It's like you're going to do it and you're building the parachute on the way down. And when you land, then everybody else is going to be like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I believed in you the whole time. And really, like when you actually needed the help, people didn't really understand.
What's up and welcome to Sam Miller Science, where you're joining me just over a decade into my personal journey of working to bridge the gap between metabolism, macros, muscle, and medicine, all while helping coaches scale the impact that they desire and deserve. If you are here, thank you so much for listening and for trusting me to help you elevate your coaching game or to lead you in your transformation to realize your true potential. In either case, each week I'll be sharing my methods, models, and message to serve as leverage for your specific goals. Without further ado, let's get on to today's show.
This next episode is a special one. Imagine you have the opportunity to pull me aside at a live event and ask pertinent industry-related questions, and that's exactly what Andrew did. So I've had the opportunity to speak at the Silverback Summit for one of my good friends over the past few years now, but this was our first time recording a live interview at the site of the summit. Now, this meant that we were able to dive into some really important topics that were coming up at the live event, but also things that have probably been on your mind if you're a health and fitness professional as well. So whether you're just starting out or you're someone who's been in the industry for a while, I think you'll really benefit from this. Andrew has a wealth of experience as a podcast host. He's actually one of the original co-hosts of Mark Bell's Power Project. So we've had the opportunity to work together before on more nutrition topics, but this is a really great episode if you're looking to dive into what's going on in the industry and getting some tips directly from me on my advice for you, whether you're just starting out or scaling a business inside this industry. Some things that coaches should consider, both related to their education, certifications, and more. So without further ado, let's jump into this featured replay.
Dude, first off, why do you cover your body so much with these damn shirts? You posted something on Instagram and I was like, I didn't know you had all that under you. You're fucking jacked, dude.
Someone referred to it as a sleeper build, I believe is now the technical modern,
that's right.
modern term.
So when you said sleeper build, I said, well, my shit's in a coma because there's no way that's a sleeper build.
I think you said coma and then someone else was like, said something about being a potato. So it was definitely an interesting comment section on that post for sure.
Try to make it a little bit uncomfortable because I know you're definitely not somebody that's going to brag about that sort of thing. But dude, okay, so let's dive right on into it. What the heck are coaches in general? Like, again, like, oh, I'm an online coach. I'm a fitness coach. What do you think is some of the like biggest things that they're just completely missing when it comes to nutrition and making sure that their clients get into the best shape?
Yeah. So one of the biggest problems first with that whole term in the industry in general is a lot of people will do like one bodybuilding competition and they think it makes them a coach, or just because they're the most jacked person at their gym. Or now there's a lot to be said for leading by example. I think if you're in shape and you walk the walk of what it is that you're going to be telling your clients to do, it's far less hypocritical than someone who's not active and in shape. So I appreciate that people are lifting and they look good or they compete, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're an expert or really someone who can shepherd someone else's transformation or their journey, because you're kind of being a steward of that whole process of like fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, everything. So one of the biggest things, one, is just coaches kind of coming into the industry and thinking that you sort of just announce or dub yourself that you are like ready to lead people. I think there's a lot to be said about getting education, mentorship, having a coach yourself. One of the best ways to be a good coach and help people with their nutrition and training is to have been coached by someone who has the experience, who has the decades under their belt. That's a really big thing that I think is missing right now. In terms of things I think are missed on the nutrition side, is just kind of being able to go beyond macros and calories, or being able to go beyond the meal plan, seeing past the diets with names, and just the trends that are out there, and realizing, having that deeper understanding of nutrition, of what really is driving people's physique goals, but also how they look and feel, how they feel, how they perform. It's so much more than just only the kind of calculator macro Tetris approach that I think people take. That's not to say that you can't, control your portions or do what's necessary in that regard. But I think people hyper focus on that sometimes, and they're missing the forest for the trees and certain elements of like what actually makes something nutritious, or let's learn about nutrition. I think a lot of coaches understand what a diet is. I don't necessarily know that they're really experts in nutrition.
Mm-hmm. No, that's funny. Like, I feel like you kind of broke a couple of egos there, because they're like, no, bro, I've been on stage. Like, I'm not going to say like somebody who has a pro card doesn't know what they're talking about, but what you are talking about is like, hey, it goes way beyond just getting jacked and then now saying like, look, you could look like me, do exactly what I did. You did mention getting a good coach. What are some other methods for people that are striving to be a good coach? Like, what else would you recommend?
I think it comes down to more of a mentality than any particular task. So there's something in you, and you're probably familiar with this, kind of in the martial arts space, known as a white belt mentality. And so if you go into every situation, whether it's working with a client or working with a coach for yourself, or whether going into an educational program, reading a book or a podcast, if you have a white belt mentality, you're able to approach every situation with kind of that learner's eye and ear, and you're just going to absorb information like a sponge. So whether you enjoy podcasts, whether you enjoy books, if you like, at some point you should do a formal program of some kind, but your journey doesn't need to start there. Read, listen to good stuff, follow people who are respected in the industry and know what they're talking about. Try not to fall victim for just like clickbait and the fads. I think learning from a variety of sources, but maybe pick like 5 people that really resonate with you and go deep with their content. Try things on yourself. So like experiential learning is really big. Maybe something has worked for you before and you have a bodybuilding background, but I think it's important to learn how to attack things from different angles. And then, lastly, yes, there's that formal education, but you can also almost, like an apprenticeship or mentorship of some kind. So you could always work for a more experienced professional, whether it's interning or starting off with maybe a part-time job. Even if you have aspirations of, being on your own long-term, you could learn a lot from kind of being, in their ecosystem, so to speak, being in their environment. You're going to pick up on things that would take you twice as long to learn if you were doing it on your own.
Mm-hmm. And then, so do you work more with on the client side or on the coaching, like coaches side?
Yeah. So I started off as both a nutrition coach and personal trainer. I did that for about a decade and have done that in some capacity for a very long time. But my role now is more so helping health professionals, whether it's training, nutritionists, dietitians, even nurse practitioners and chiropractors who want to have that coaching style business online in the wellness space. And we focus a lot on kind of the deeper components of metabolic health, things like lab testing, understanding how to actually effectively do client check-ins, how to provide a tremendous amount of value online when you're not necessarily seeing people in a brick and mortar every single day. So we are a bit more B2B now in terms of my formal offers, but I do have, book, podcast. I have a lot of resources that would be applicable to someone who's just trying to get healthier. And I put a lot of those out for free, or they're very affordable. Like the book is less than $20, but the actual live program that we run and my team mostly helps to facilitate that. I still teach inside the program, but I've really taken on a bit more of the role of like teacher and team leader, as opposed to just only working one-to-one. It would take a very long time to reach the amount of people that I'm trying to reach by doing that.
Yeah. And so for the coaches that you've helped, what are some of the ways that they are, I guess I'll say, making the connection? Is, again, because like I just talked with Father Michael about like, hey, if you're trying to bring value into this world and like actually get out there, you have to do it in person. For some of these coaches, though, they have like a big online platform. What are some of the ways that you're helping to kind of like shorten that gap? Even that, like, I know this planet is getting smaller and smaller with the internet, but there's still that human connection that a lot of people are just absolutely missing. How are you kind of circumventing that to get coaches to connect better with their clients?
So I think there's something to be said about owning your zip code and your area code. Like if you're brand new and you maybe are building that online following, because some people do have an online following, others don't. Mm-hmm. But you can build a lot of trust, reputation, and social proof by helping people locally in your area, do seminars, offer your time, maybe do some coaching case studies, or have some clients who are willing to kind of be, your first few clients that are open to giving you a testimonial, like if you help them improve their health. I think those situations are very valuable. So even if you want to be an online coach, that doesn't mean that you don't have an in-person presence. It just means you might not own like a brick and mortar building. You could coach people online, but go to local networking events, go to a lot of the folks that I work with, maybe they're parents and they have kids who are playing sports or involved in different activities. There's so many ways that you can connect with people, in your county, in your zip code, in your city, depending on, where you live. And I think that's still valuable, even if you do want to do most of your work online. Like you could have your check-in be online and maybe you move them into like a Zoom coaching environment, but that doesn't mean that you didn't meet them in real life at some point. You can go to events. I think industry events are very important, but if you're newer and you don't have a huge following, don't underestimate how having a small network of people who like you, can be really helpful. And if you are online, I try to get people to move away from kind of this over attachment to the algorithm and think about building, if you can just have 100 true fans, kind of a Seth Godin concept. If you can build those tribes and true fans, you're really going to put yourself in a better place, both in person and online, because you'd be shocked at what you can build by having 100 people who really respect, appreciate, and jive with your work. So if you feel like you have this mountain to climb and you think you need 1 million followers, you really don't. You need 100 really invested fans or clients. And not all of them even need, you could have 30 or 40 clients, but maybe you have 60 other people where they tune into your free content and they comment on stuff and they support stuff or they review your podcast. That's something I think people undervalue tremendously, because those first 100 people, and then they're going to have friends, they're going to have siblings, they're going to have coworkers and colleagues that then they can, when you become the obvious choice to those people, then they tell their friends. But so many people are worried about impressing 1 million people that they never get the first 100 because they're not willing to go one person at a time and actually connect with them, provide value. And that is something that really can help to inspire like a movement for your business or your coaching. Or even if you're just trying to be a content creator, I think there's still something to be said about engaging with that first core group.
Yep.
Because
Absolutely.
those are kind of your loyal fans that help to move the needle, really.
Yeah. And it's, if somebody is still fairly new, they're trying to build their clientele. They're trying to build that 100 people that you just mentioned. What are some ways that coaches can get some early wins, right? Because like if I have no experience other than myself, like I can share my story, but like if I start working with somebody, I'm going to like, hey, like I really want to get these results because I need that testimonial. But I don't have that yet. What are some ways that we can get some wins for some of these newer coaches?
So you're saying outside of coaching someone to get the testimonial, is there anything else they could do?
Yeah, just again, because you're talking about like, okay, I got that person a win, whatever that win is, and that person's now going to tell their friend group. And then it's like, so, okay, cool. Now I have some credibility within this circle. So far, they haven't gotten that first win. How do you think they can start implementing some strategies to start getting just like, again, a more positive traction with people?
When you're brand new, I think you have to knock on multiple doors at the same time. So you need to be leading by example with your own fitness or nutrition. You need to be networking. You need to be creating content. And then you're also coaching people to demonstrate that you're good at what you do, that you can keep because what's going to happen is when you market a coaching service, you then have to be able to fulfill the promise of whatever, like your offer is basically a prepackaged promise to solve someone's problem. So if you can develop the reputation of solving that problem, you create content about how you solve that problem and why you're able to solve that problem, why you're interested in that problem, what is your story. And then you can also speak to it effectively, and people see you in your own journey showing up, doing the work. I think it's a snowball effect of all of those things together. You have to be doing multiple. It's very hard, not to say that it can't be done, but if you're only doing one of those things, like for example, the person training who did the bodybuilding show, but they're not invested in these other aspects of coaching, that's going to be a problem. The content creator who maybe doesn't have the social proof of creating, maybe they make great content, but no one believes that they can actually solve the problem that they're struggling with. Or maybe you lead by example and you create content, but you're not relatable because people look at you and you have an 8-pack, but they don't see any educational content from you, so they don't understand how to get there. It feels unrealistic to them. But when I think you pursue free education and paid education, as well as mentorship, apprenticeship, you create content, you lead by example, and then you also work to create that social proof, build your reputation through helping people, slowly but surely, those start to stack wins for you, where then you become a more credible source. I think that's kind of the ingredient. That's the recipe for credibility. And as a coach, that's really how you're going to grow. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do that, right? Those are kind of 5 main categories, and everybody has their own preference and style. But that's what I try to get people to focus on. And if you're doing those 5 things, you can build that tribe of 100 people a bit faster. Again, the problem is with social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, everyone wants to have 1 million people. And because of that, they want to go one to many, one to many, one to many. But now your followers don't feel very important. You're not actually, your advantage right now is what you perceive to be your disadvantage. Is like, because you don't have a ton of followers engagement, well, that means you can spend more time with each follower. Whereas someone who has a massive account, they're not responding to all their comments. They're not responding to their DMs, but you can. And so that disadvantage is actually your advantage to build trust with those people. They like you and they share your stuff. It's a different way to grow. But if you're not the most prolific person in the world, or you find that you're still new in that content game, and I'm sure you've seen this with podcasts too. It's like, that's how you kind of build a bit of a loyal following, doing that, where people actually care. And they're not just like, you're not just some random person on a list of shows that they subscribe to or people they follow. That's kind of where it starts.
Yeah, you build that real, true connection. So that makes a ton of sense. Again, if we're still focused on kind of like somebody that is fairly new, there's a really good chance that that new person is going to give their first couple clients everything for like dirt cheap. Do you work with people on building out their offers as well?
So we have, certainly. I would recommend, it's okay that there's discrepancy between price to value at the beginning, because you're trying to prove yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you may need to have another job in the short term while you get this off the ground with your first 2 to 5 clients. And what a lot of people do is they put so much pressure on themselves, and then they don't have the experience to charge those premium rates. And if they try to, then they disappoint the client who signs up. And then they create a negative word of mouth effect and negative reputation. So as much as it may feel like it kind of sucks at the beginning, that you feel like you're almost like interning, or you're doing some work for free, or you're getting your hands dirty, or you're undercharging. Again, don't do that forever, but there might be a little tiny segment at the beginning for your first 3 to 5 people where you need to do it, because you've got to get the kinks out of that offer. Otherwise, you're providing a bad experience that you're overcharging for. It would be better to build an amazing reputation, and the price to value discrepancy is so significant that people are those raving fans. And then after that, you can gradually raise those prices over time. But I just view an offer as like, it's just this prepackaged solution to someone's problem. But in a way, when you convert someone into that offer, you're making a promise to them that you're going to help them. And so 2 things that will end up pissing off a client is like unfulfilled expectations and miscommunication. So if you charge a lot and you don't have the skills to back it up, they are going to have unfulfilled expectations, and it creates this massive disconnect. There's a miscommunication too, in the way that a lot of people, what they think that they're able to do, or what they think they can do as a coach, versus what the client's actually receiving. That just leads to disappointment. And then when people start to kind of resent the fact that they gave you their money as a coach, like, that's not a good place to be at all. So until you have that confidence, you build that up, and you know that you can genuinely provide someone with a really good experience, it's good to just be open and honest in the beginning. Like, if you are new, people will resonate with the fact that you might actually inspire people who follow you, who want to pursue a side hustle, or maybe they're really interested in carpentry, or they want to work on cars, or they have everyone's got their passion, right? And so even if they may not necessarily hire you or be interested in fitness, they might just resonate with the fact that you're following your dreams, and you have goals, aspirations, vision. So there's something to be said for that. And I think people respect the honesty of, hey, I'm starting out with this, and so I'm going to do 3 to 5 case studies because I want to really solidify my craft. Because of that, you are getting, maybe you do a donation-based thing, or you do like a initial, I think scholarships have been butchered in fitness because everybody's doing like a scholarship all the time. That's not to say that there aren't real ones, but some people are doing them in a way that's kind of disingenuous. So I think you can do some type of incentive on the front end to get people in, but most importantly, I think if you say, hey, I'm super passionate about this, I'm looking to build a business doing it. Right now, I'm looking to demonstrate the skills that I've learned through my initial certification and reading and my own transformation, and I'd like to help people. And I think you'd be a great fit for that. I just want to establish from the beginning, the goal for me here is I want to work to improve the experience. Ideally, get a case study from you so that I can use this in the future, to support the growth of this passion, and thing that I'm working on. I think that transparency is important. Don't act like you have 20 years experience if you started 20 hours ago, right? It's like, that's a great way to lead people to disappointment. If you can be very honest about that, I think it's good.
Yeah. So a lot of people, they like, okay, I want to pursue this. I'm going to go all in, blah, blah, blah. As soon as I do this, as soon as I get like a certification, or as soon as I do blah, 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 do you think coaches are still waiting a little bit too much? Like they're kind of just using that as excuses, whether it be a certification. Like, I guess we can start there. Like, are certifications worth a damn?
I think it depends on the program.
Mm-hmm.
So some are not. That's could be a whole conversation for another time.
I know.
But I do think doing that initial step is very important.
Okay.
Now, with that said, are there people who kind of are looking for an artificial permission slip, like from their grandma or their football coach or like their sister or people in their life who are never going to understand why this is important to you? So there are many people who put their goals and dreams on the back burner and then kind of sit around and they think that it's I actually told this story at our live event last month. And I think many people in their business, this isn't limited to health and fitness professionals, but we're raised in the society where you like need a hall pass to go do, or you need a bus note to go to your friend's house, or you got to get the permission slip to go on the field trip. And so many people go through life like that. They're waiting for someone else's stamp of approval to be able to go chase their dreams. And that's not how it works. It's like you're going to do it and you're building the parachute on the way down. And when you land, then everybody else is going to be like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I believed in you the whole time. And really, like when you actually needed the help, people didn't really understand. But you taking action creates not only the proof for yourself, but also the people around you that you're serious about it. Because how many people do they hear all the time that's like, oh, I'm going to quit that job one day or I'm going to do this thing. And most people that they interact with don't honor that commitment. They don't follow through. And so if you're going to be one of the rare few who do, you have to walk that path, sometimes on your own. And then later, after you've gotten a little bit down the path, as you're looking back, people are then going to provide more support. But there's initially in the journey, and there's other content creators who talk about this, but it's like at first people might root for you and then it gets like very quiet for a while. And then all of a sudden you get to a place where like you really don't need the affirmation anymore, but that's when people give it to you. It's like as soon as you actually get to a solid place where you feel good about yourself, then people are like, oh my God, you're so great. And I believed about you, believed in you this whole time and all of that. And it's just because they don't understand and you're going to shed layers of both yourself and friendships. And there's going to be a lot of changes in that middle. It's kind of this messy middle ground that happens for business owners and people pursuing a passion, whether that's related to content or otherwise. But I don't necessarily think all certifications are bad. I don't think all experiencers are bad. You need to do something to get your foot in the door. Like I wouldn't recommend having zero education and then just putting up a sign that's like, I'm going to coach people. That we have too much of that right now. If anything, there's too much of that. However, on the other side, if you're someone who's maybe done like 7 programs and you still have only worked with 2 clients, okay, there's a problem. So part of this is a self-awareness thing. Whoever's listening to this, I don't know you personally. You need to do a little bit of an audit and investigation. Like, am I the person who's done 7 programs and I'm procrastinating because I need a permission slip from someone to do this when I need to really write it myself? Or could I benefit from getting a little more experience and allowing myself to truly sharpen the axe, so to speak, and cultivate expertise so that I'm not going to hurt someone? Because going into something without the knowledge and hurting someone, well, you're never going to make a career out of it because you're jeopardizing your whole future. So be smart, be safe, don't do anything stupid, but don't do 10 programs and then sit around and wonder like, well, I haven't worked with, any clients. You need to get your hands dirty too.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody does want to start going down I'll say the correct path, whatever that means to you, but I'm just going to say the correct path, and they want to work with somebody like you, do you offer programs and that sort of thing for coaches? And like, what does that, I'll say curriculum like look like?
Yeah. So our program kind of takes people who maybe have done that initial certification and they're looking to go from kind of intermediate to they really want to be an expert. And I would start off. So my team and I offer a number of free workshops. I've got hundreds of podcast episodes. I have a book that's like $17.99 or $19.99. Amazon changes the price all the time, but very affordable ways to get started. And what I would do is I would find people that you like their teaching style, you like learning from them. They put out good information for free. And also a way to vet this too is like, look for that social proof and reputation. The same way that someone would look for a fitness coach and be like, has this person gotten results? When you're looking at educators in the space, you can go to our page at Metabolism School. We have dozens and dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of student videos and quotes and, feedback on the work that we do right inside of our live program. So look for the feedback, look for people who have commented on, hey, this was my experience. This is how it went. This is what I have to say about it. And there should be real people. And so the one thing I do say about our program is we do have more proof than any program because we have a lot of people who will do video interviews. We do podcasts. We have them submit their own testimonials at our live event. We have people who are sharing, singing the praises of the program. But I never try to push someone necessarily into like, hey, buy my stuff right away. Like, if you listen to a podcast or you read the book or you consume my free content on Instagram and it resonates with you, like, let's talk. But I always try to deposit plenty of value first, which I think you can get because I have so much accessible free stuff. Like, you could go find that if you're like, man, I really like learning, like this is what I want to do. Cool. Then, like, go to the program page, we'll figure it out. But our curriculum really focuses on helping people understand, so many programs teach coaches how to make these surface level adjustments, right? But not many teach them how the body actually works in response to those adjustments. So if you're someone who likes to know the why behind things, or the person who's like, I don't just want to know what time it is, I want to know how the clock works. That's essentially what we're doing with nutrition, metabolism, hormones, gut health. So if you're interested in more of that preventive approach, you like learning about the gut, you want to learn about men's and women's hormones, different autoimmune conditions, inflammation, insulin resistance, that's really where we're helping people kind of bridge that gap between the macro coach and the medical industry. And we do that through our live program. But again, check out the free stuff. Live content first is what I recommend. Listen to what our students say. I think hearing from them is more powerful than anything I could ever say to anyone listening to this. So they can find that as well. And that's really, my main focus now is providing that experience.
That's really cool. With a live event like Silverback Summit, you did kind of touch on it earlier about like coaches need to be like in the room and they need to experience that. If somebody's never experienced a live event, they're like, well, Sam, you just told me all your stuff's free on YouTube. You have a podcast. You have like very affordable books. Like, I'll just do that, dude, because I don't have to fly anywhere. Yeah, I can just do it all at home, right? What are the benefits that you've seen and some of the breakthroughs that you have seen other people have when it comes to coming to an actual live event? Like, it's different, and you can only really like experience it if you're here. But for somebody that hasn't, can you try to explain what that's like?
Yeah, so live events are great for a number of things. Community and connection, of course, inspiration, motivation, changing your perspective, but understanding that coaching, entrepreneurship, or, if you're a provider listening to this, there's so many aspects of what we do where when we're caring for these other people or you're creating content for your audience, like, it can be a lonely road. That path is a difficult one. And so even if you find 3 or 4 like-minded friends, I mean, some of my closest friends to this day are people that I've met at live events. So even if not from a professional and business perspective, looking at like the financial ROI of attending one of these things, you will build friendships that actually last a lifetime. Or at least, for me, I've had some for like a decade now with people that I met at live events when I was just trying to, expose myself to all that was the industry had to offer. So community, connections, friendships, inspiration, I think alternative educational perspectives. And maybe it inspires you to take something that you've learned previously in a book or podcast and apply it differently. So that's super valuable. And the free resources are really more like a kind of gateway opportunity, right? They're not necessarily going to make you an expert to the extent that having someone who can kind of assess your strengths and weaknesses, look for different blind spots, and then being able to give you a proven path, right? The key word there is speed. So when you do a program that someone has designed based on someone who's walked the path that you want to walk, it is going to be faster than going through hundreds of hours of free content, right? Much, much faster. So if you value speed and someone kind of eliminating the roadblocks and obstacles in your path, that's where it makes a lot of sense to work with a mentor. That's not to say that free content isn't valuable. Free content should be a tool in your arsenal to get some initial exposure to, if you like the way that someone teaches things, explains things, you'll resonate with their story. If you resonate with their story and you feel comfortable in their environment, then, do their program, it will go faster than the free content. So an event isn't a replacement for reading good books. Reading good books isn't a replacement for an event. Listening to podcasts isn't a replacement for doing a program. They all serve a very unique purpose in your journey where it's synergistic in a way. And if I had to pick, I think live programs with interaction and events are 2 of the strongest components. I think if you're just a very skeptical person or you're working through, like, obviously in our industry, there's a lot of problems with like trust right now. That's where free content can be valuable because it helps you to kind of understand who's real, who's not. But go beyond like the 30-second Instagram reel,
Please.
Yeah, please. And then from there, I think you can build true relationships, but events are very relationship based. Programs help to design a path for you to get you where you want to be faster and with less headaches and frustration along the way. And you get to learn from, so wisdom is like when you learn from someone else's mistakes instead of like taking the time to just like learn them on your own. I think it's a combination of like, you could be a smart person, you could be a talented person, but when you actually are smart enough to understand that like this person's been in the industry for 18 years, I can move faster if I just learn what they learn not to do. And I don't do that, I'm going to grow faster and bigger than they did. And that's why, you know, you'll hear it in the business space, like Gary Vee didn't have Gary Vee, right? Or things like that from a marketing perspective. But because people who followed his content have him, they can grow faster at a younger age and make more progress. Well, if you're an aspiring nutrition coach, you know, there's so many things I wish I didn't do, but I can teach you that so you don't do it. And you don't have to learn by like jeopardizing your reputation or your bank account in the process, instead of having it be this painstakingly slow thing that like I'm just now reaping rewards from those previous efforts. So none of them replace each other. I would view them all as valuable kind of individual pursuits that you should incorporate. Like if you were to break up your year, look at ways to be involved with each. You know, you can travel to an event and listen to a podcast. They're not mutually exclusive. You know, it's like listen to the podcast on the plane on the way to the event, right? There's ways, if you're truly immersed in this stuff, there's ways to do all of them in a very integrated way. And I think those are the people who grow the most, is like they're doing, again, knocking on multiple doors, not just thinking that like this one thing is going to get them to be, you don't become the best in the industry by just doing one of those things. You have to really have a mix.
Yeah. So Sam Miller Science is behind a lot of your favorite, I guess I'll say coaches, like backbone and infrastructure and information. It's really coming from Sam. So if somebody does want to work with you and you know, everything you're providing, how can they do so?
Yeah, so I post a lot of free content at Sam Miller Science on Instagram, super active. My podcast is called Sam Miller Science. Our program page is Metabolism School or metabolismschool.com. Great places to learn more about what we do. But I would start, you know, follow one of those things. My book is called Metabolism Made Simple. And all of those resources will kind of lead you, you know, in our direction there. And yeah, we've worked with, whether it's individuals or a lot of the, you know, whether it's influencers you follow or large teams of fitness and nutrition professionals, we've actually done a lot of the mentorship behind the scenes, the systems behind the scenes that make those programs successful. And if someone is a business owner, but maybe not an educator, and they have a bunch of assistant coaches, oftentimes they're tapping us on the shoulder and saying, hey, can you get these people up to speed? And so we have that proven model for doing that. I would definitely recommend, you know, listening to some of the folks who have been through the experience, and you can find that on the Metabolism School page as well.
There you go. Yeah. So we'll link everything for sure in the description. He did, you know, talk a lot about being at events like this. So we're going to definitely link out ways of how to get to the next Silverback. If you missed out this one, you're watching it. So chances are you did miss out. So don't miss on the next one. And yeah, dude, Sam, thank you so much for that, dude. That was an amazing job. Again, one of the cool things about last year's Silverback Summit, because we already connected through the podcast, but we actually got to hang out, and then we, you know, followed up after Silverback. And so it's just been really cool to be your friend and watch you grow from afar. And honestly, dude, like I wouldn't trade that for anything. So coming to these events has been really cool. And then you've been a highlight of that for sure. So I really appreciate your friendship, man. And I appreciate your time right now.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
This show is designed to help you translate complex nutrition, fitness, and physiology concepts into leverage for your clients' goals or your own personal goals. This podcast is for online education, meaning this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. And no doctor-patient or coach-client relationship is formed through listening to this episode. The use of information in this podcast and the show notes, or the reliance on the information provided, is done at the listener's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and is for educational purposes only. Always consult your physician before beginning any exercise program, and users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such condition. By accessing this podcast and any other episode, the listener acknowledges that the entire contents and design of this podcast are the property of Oracle Athletic Science and should not be used or retransmitted without permission of Oracle Athletic Science. This is protected under U.S. and international copyright and trademark laws. Except as where otherwise provided herein, users of this podcast may save and use the information contained in this podcast only for personal or other non-commercial educational purposes. No other use, including without limitation, reproduction, retransmission, or editing of this podcast may be made without prior written permission of Oracle Athletic Science and Sam Miller, which may be requested through the contact information in the show notes. By accessing this podcast, the listener acknowledges that Oracle Athletic Science makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast, and coaches and listeners understand that this information may change over time with different research and anecdotal practices in the field. It is the listener's responsibility to stay up to date on this information. As always, this show is designed to help you, and I appreciate you listening to every episode. Simply understand it's for general informational and educational purposes, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.